Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer90.com. Right now, shop all the latest stuff, including the Women's World Cup gear, FC Dallas, European clubs. They got all the new stuff for the new season. They got the Marvel stuff for MLS, Captain America balls, that you name it, they got it. Third Degree listeners get 20% off your order at Soccer90.com when you use the code Third Degree. Hey, just like the name of this podcast, Third Degree. Some exclusions may apply.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to episode number 220 of Third Degree, the podcast. Hi, it's me, Pete. Alongside today, first off, howdy, Dan Crooke.
What's going on?
I'm just sitting here watching the hilarity of the MLS All-Star game, which I just popped on and is now in the 70th minute. And I can
I'm
only
sorry to hear that.
Yes, have you seen these Arsenal away kits they debuted tonight?
Oh, the hideous yellow one?
Oh, holy bejesus. That's a bad one. And your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, editor, founder of thirddegree.net, Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Hi, Peter. I've officially decided that this heat is for the birds.
Okay.
Yep, I'm done with it.
You're done with this heat.
Yep, I'm out.
Okay.
Gonna pack up the truck.
Gonna go
just
start
go.
covering, go cover the Seattle Sounders full time now.
Yep, they're about to launch Spokane USL 1. I'm in. I'm out.
See if you can find a team in Alaska
Yeah, Alaska would be good.
or the Canadian Premier League.
Somewhere that it is much, much colder, please.
Yeah. It is summertime in Texas, Buzz.
Oh my God.
Here we are.
Every year I hate it, and every year I leave.
Well, that's right. You're about to go on your
Yeah. Walkabout,
your
yeah,
partner walkabout.
Yeah.
Usually, don't you have another one that you go solo?
No, it just depends on the year. Sometimes it's solo, sometimes it's with the better half. This time it's with the better half. So
Okay.
And that's the walkabout brought to you by Soccer90.
yes, in a way it is.
Is it sponsored by Soccer 90?
No, it's not.
Oh.
But kind of it is.
It should be.
Yeah,
You should cut that deal.
yeah. I should. I don't know. No one cares but me.
Now, where do you go again?
Northern Idaho.
Oh,
There's a-
that's right. Because
yeah.
you're going to go join up with your friends in the the army, quote unquote. Right?
Yeah, up at Lake Coeur d'Alene. There's not nearly as many as there used to be, but there's still some. I avoid those people, but
Yeah.
it's the lake is nice.
I bet.
Yeah.
Hopefully your weather will be nice and your drive up will be nice.
Well, the weather there is scheduled to be high of 90, low of 65. So
Okay.
we're excited about that.
So you're going to miss League Cup.
Amazing how that works.
So while the rest of us are all fussing about this idea, you're like, oh, I can go on vacation.
It's almost like somebody scheduled their vacation around Leagues Cup.
That's a nice idea. I like it.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
for you. Well, as I guess the best thing to say is that Dallas did not end the first half of the season with a loss. They went up to the place that has been a bit of a bogey. When was the last time Dallas won a game in Seattle, Buzz?
Only
2011,
once. I
right?
believe it's 2011, 2012, something like that. It's been it's really the one time ever. It's been a long time.
Would you say, Dan?
2011.
2011. Okay. So to get a point there, I feel like this is a game that you can look at of one of two ways. Going up and getting a draw, you can go, hey, look, this situation is dire. Getting anything in Seattle is unexpected greatness. And the other part of it is you can also say to yourself, man, if Bernie Kamungo is the only other person on this team can score, there's a lot of problems going on right now with this club. And I guess you can kind of pick and choose which side of the coin you want to look at this match from.
Well, both can be true. It can be true that historically you cannot win in Seattle, with the one exception. There are lots of reasons why. And yes, you would want to say over the course of the history, they need to figure out how to be better and win in some of these locations. Totally true. Also totally true that given the turf, and the usual troubles you have there, even when you have everybody, that getting a point there is good. That's a good result. And particularly given all the current troubles with just being able to field a real roster and the missing pieces, yes, getting a tie is definitely a good result. And I think you could even look at the way they played and be relatively happy with the way they played. Yet it is also very true that when Bernie Kamungo in his 180 minutes or whatever he has is the second leading scorer on your team with 3 goals. That sort of gives you a microcosm into what's going wrong with this club this season. Given, of course, that it's still a team that's, as of today, still in the playoffs and has been all season pretty much. So it's not like this is the worst club in the league, but there definitely is a duality here of conflicting forces and how we feel about this team. Independent of all that, I think it's a good result in Seattle.
Well, 4 points out of the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games.
Not good.
Is not a good way to end the first half of the season.
No.
Injury riddled or not. Dan, you got any thoughts about the tie in Seattle?
I mean, it put an end to that run of defeats for one. I think, you go to Seattle, you automatically consider it a loss. Getting outshot 17-3, and they came away with a point. I thought, Nico does his whole sit in bunker, then try and nick something mentality, and honestly, that's kind of what they did. I mean, granted, it was a first half goal, but getting a point, getting a goal on the road without Jesus is monumental enough.
Okay.
And I mean, no complaints about the own goal as well. I kind of, at the time, feared that the FC Dallas fan base would jump on Junker for what was really just,
Beautiful finish.
yeah.
Oh,
But I
man,
mean,
that's just-
that Rodon had that ball covered. It was, try and get something and divert it away from goal, or it's, Rodon's got an easy tab, and that was a phenomenal ball for that, what led to that own goal.
Buzz, I guess it's tough to go to these, look at the lineups of these games and kind of figure out what to expect out of any of this. So let's just try to take the good parts out of it. I think that's probably the best way to look at it is, what are the good things to take away from a draw in Seattle when you've got that lineup?
Well, you're right about that. Look, this is a league of parity. We talk about it all the time. You can just look at the standings and you can see it. When you're missing your high-powered pieces, you're just trying to hold on. Given the amount of injuries, given Jesus didn't make the roster, which is a different question entirely, you have to try and grind through the game, and that's what you did. And when you do that, you have to take your chances when they come. You have to take these moments. There's a very small window of opportunity in these games when they're like this, when you're fighting and clawing and just trying to stay in it. And when that little sliver comes, you've got to go. And Bernie Kamungo, for example, twice now, when he's had that opportunity, he's taken it and he's won. He had a game-winning goal a few weeks ago, and he had the game-tying goal tonight. Both in circumstances when he, only had 1 or 2 shots in the game. In this particular game, he had every shot on goal for the team, and he happened to get one in the net. And so there was a game in between the two where he had an opportunity just like this, in the sense of a game with limited opportunities, and he had a clear opportunity and he missed, and then they didn't win that game. And that's the margin of error we're talking about. These tiny little moments can make a difference when you're so tight and playing it so close and so tight. And then the other side from Bernie is that your defense has to hold together. And not to shorten this down to a very quick discussion, but Martin Paz was, again, big when he needed to be. Only 2 saves. So I didn't have him down as like a man-of-the-match level performance because there was only 2 moments. But those are huge moments. And just like Bernie making the moment on the other end, if Paz doesn't make that moment in that very tight margin when it comes on the defensive end, then they lose this game pretty handily, because it would have been 3-0 probably at that point before they come get their goal to tie it up. So just generally speaking, when you have these games that are have such a small margin for error because you are so thin and because the other team is and it's such a difficult place for you to perform, you just have to have these little things go in your favor, these little moments of joy, and take advantage of them. And when you do, you can come away with something, and that's what happened in this game.
Was there any particular individual performance from somebody that lifted your spirits?
I actually thought Nikosi Tafari and Sebastian Lletget were both excellent. On paper, as Dan pointed out, by the time they've processed all the numbers, it ended up being 17 shots, but they only had 2 shots on goal. So that tells you a couple of things. Dallas had, I think, 5 or 6 blocked shots of those 15, right? Several of them were from range, but when only 2 of them managed to get on net, that tells me you're doing something right. It tells me you're harassing shooters. It tells me you're keeping them from not good opportunities. They're from bad angles, or they're from bad distances, or you're getting in front of them and just causing the shooter to hesitate or shoot wide because your positioning is good, or you're making an outright block. Granted, you would like to hold people to less shots than that, but that's a typical home team shot total. It's not for Dallas. Dallas doesn't shoot like that, but most teams at home end up with these 12, 15, 17 kind of shots at home. And so as the road performances go, the wide guys, not as much, but those two guys in the middle with Paz behind them, and probably Facundo, who's very static in front of them, probably, did a nice job of limiting those danger chances and those, right up top of the box, right in the key part of the box, keeping everything wide and long. So again, that's how you win games on the road. This is what you have to do. And it's not a win, so you get a point on the road. That's how you have to play when you're an average team, which is what they are when they're missing everybody.
Am I wrong to say that maybe we saw some spark of hope in that Sebastian Lletget has got something coming back?
Yes. This was the first game where I think I counted 4 moments in the game where I thought he impacted the game in a positive way and wasn't just running around in a circle. There was a play early where he freed up, I think it may have been a Velasco on the wrong flipping sides. He had one. And then there was one in midfield where he dribbled through 3 guys and made an outlet pass under pressure when they tried to box him in. And then he had the assist to Kamungo. And then there was one late where there were 4 times where he clearly made a difference in the game and turned the game. Now, it still wasn't a 90-minute performance. There are still big chunks of it where he was non-existent. And if you looked at where his passes and his connectivity and his impact came, it's all way out wide by the sideline, which means he's vacating the middle in order to try and find space, which in and of itself isn't the end of the world, except that when you're playing a 4-3-3, that means you're leaving Facundo and Edwin kind of on a island by themselves. You want to be in there doing your job, which is not to say he wasn't defending, but if he's having to go so far out in order to find joy in the game, that's not what you would like him to be able to have those moments of impact when he's in the mix in the middle where all the stuff is happening. But this was definitely, from my mind, this was a step forward for him over where he's been. And it's actually really positive because I honestly think it was the first game this year where I watched him play and felt like he positively impacted things. Even if it wasn't a complete game, it was something.
Yeah, well, that is a good sign. And on the other side, well, not on the other side, but the other player I was interested in your opinion in, or Dan's in, is Velasco's progress.
Dan, you want to take a shot at Velasco?
There's a lot of shots to take at Velasco. He wasn't the best Argentine in the team.
Yeah, I feel like we're not seeing an improvement from Velasco. As Dan is hinting, he's still static. I keep hoping that as guys come back, maybe he'll find the game again, but he basically drifted all over the place and didn't do very much for my mind. Some of the stats are still there, but the impact is not. He's just in the game. He's almost become like Lletget was. If we get Lletget playing again, then it'll be down to getting Velasco playing again and Arriola playing again.
I think you're burying the lead, really. The big takeaway from that game is clearly that FC Dallas is now the holder of the longest streak in MLS history without a penalty.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Yep. 56 games, I think.
So do we have
55, sorry.
Okay, so do we have a theory behind that, Buzz? I know everybody's going to say the league's out to get us, they hate us, it's a conspiracy. But I think there's got to be some sort of reasonable explanation as to why that's the case.
Well, they don't take a high volume of shots. They carry the ball a little further looking for the right opportunity. They're not necessarily slashing in there aggressively. They're being more meticulous about when they actually get into the box. I 100% do believe that since the Jesse Gonzalez era, that the referees collectively in this league have not been very forgiving to FC Dallas. Since
the ghost of Jesse Gonzalez still haunts us.
I think, because those teams under Oscar did a lot of shenanigans, a lot of delaying kind of tactics, and Jesse was the worst of it. And I heard lots of talk that from people around the league is that the referees were often warned, hey, when you go to Dallas, you got to be ready for them to do all this stuff. And I legitimately believe that some of that vibe has carried over in the sense that I don't think Dallas as a club gets a lot of benefit of the doubt. They don't get referees don't look at them as just like the rest of the league, quite frankly, does. People can think of Dallas as just a team in the league. They don't have any superstars. They don't have any big names. They don't have any fame. They don't have any buzz about them, not to be funny, and so I think referees just look at them as a team and they don't get a lot of protection or benefit. Things that are close kind of go the other way. It seems like a lot of the time. And I try to be very unbiased about referees. I'm a firm believer that you have to play the game as it is in front of you. Whatever the ref is, the ref's going to be doing what he's doing. You just have to deal with it. I totally believe that. But when you get a run like this, it's not all that, but I can't help but think that is a little piece of it. The majority of it really is just the style that they use. They just don't they don't attack into the box at pace. They don't take a large volume of shots because a lot of times you get fouls when people are diving in and trying to get on the ball when you're trying to shoot it is when you get some of those opportunities coming. They don't have a lot of guys. They only have one guy that really wants to dribble past people, and that's Velasco. And he and his are really cut inside kind of things. And so you don't get a lot of people diving at his feet. You kind of just stand in front of him because he only has the 1 foot, and where Obrian is kind of booted and run after it, so he's not going to draw a lot of kind of fouls, so it's a combination of all that stuff. It's just a weird circumstance in a way that it all has piled up. But I do really legitimately believe that there's a referee unfriendliness to this organization.
Dan, what's the actual records set at now?
55 games.
Wow.
Just beating Chivas USA's mark of 54 in.
Boy, you
see another example of a club that no one liked.
I was just going to say, you're in some shit company when you're beating up Chivas USA for a record of some sort. And it's never, look, there is no good record for Chivas USA they hold that I can think of. So if you're beating them at some record, it's not a good sign at all. Goodness gracious.
I mean, you can't break this kind of record without a little help, right? Don't you think? So it's like, a club people don't like,
Yeah.
So
I mean, we were talking, last season before about Obrian's dives and how that's always gonna just be
yes,
that's gonna make referees say, oh no, it's a dive. He didn't get taken down there. But I mean, ultimately, with the assistance of VAR, you can kind of take a lot of that gray area, not gray area. You can kind of take any bias out of it to a degree. It has to be very crystal clear. Hey, there's a clear and obvious foul there that you've missed. That FC Dallas just isn't experiencing. But
55 games without a penalty. Wow.
494 days ago was the last one.
Do we know what game it was and who converted it? Did we even score it? Did the team even score it?
It was against Nashville. Franco Jara scored it.
Who? That's insane.
Well, see, think about that too. Like Franco Jara, what kind of striker was he? Runs a higher line.
Shitty.
Right? He would. No, let's be serious. He would body up on defenders, right? He would occupy center backs. He would contact center backs. He would draw people in contacting him. You're right.
Yeah.
They don't have anybody to play like that now. Obrian is vertical. All right. Paul is tends to dart and dive and stay away from people because he's diminutive. He's only 5'3" or 2 or 1 or whatever he is. Right. Velasco dribbles, but he doesn't dribble and try and cut back and forth. He just kind of goes one way, so he's predictable in that sense. And Jesus runs away from people, so they don't really have anyone who's initiating contact and creating contact. So it's just the way they play.
You wanna, if you really want to laugh, that was the game that. Oh God, words are tough. That was the game that Alan Velasco made that crazy run.
Oh, the Nashville goal, yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Wow. Which, by the way, wasn't that the first game of last season?
It was his third, I think.
It was one of his early games.
It was his first game.
Yeah, it was his. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That's
and it was Paul Arriola that won the penalty. He just kind of stopped in front of his man, running towards goal, and got pushed by Jack Mayer in the back.
You know, frankly, I mean, honestly, if you're a soccer nerd, the Buzz, your explanation as to how you go 55 games without being awarded a penalty actually is kind of fascinating. Just from the tactics point of it, the style of play, like that's how a team goes almost more than an entire season without being awarded a penalty. And it's the kind of player. Yeah, that's great stuff. That's
I mean, think about the Blas Perez era and think about how many PKs they had in that era when he was constantly generating contact and banging on center backs and making people angry. Or Ariel Graziano era when he played a similar kind of way, getting in people's heads. They don't have anybody that really gets in people's heads right now, right? They don't have somebody like that. They don't have somebody that is a big contactor, big initiator. Offensively speaking, they don't, right? Mm-hmm. So it's, you can there's lots of reasons that all these things are contributing. And again, I think there's this tiny bit of an influence that pushes it over the line and making it ridiculous. This, slight perhaps bias.
Yeah. I was listening to you talk about Velasco and the lack of improvement, and it makes me wonder, where do we think that went wrong? Because, I mean, it's easy to say that maybe he was scouted by Dallas, but there were a ton of teams that were interested in him, and he was a highly touted prospect this time 2 seasons ago, and there was a reason why his value was set at $9 million or whatever the dollar was. Buzz, do you have a sense as to why he's not progressing or getting better?
I have some gut emotions as to why it might be. I don't know that if I'm right or not. My instincts are that his initial success that he was having last year lent him to believe that he was on a good trajectory with what he was doing in terms of being impactful in this league and impactful in this team. And then this year he's trying to play the same way, a way that seemed really to be working last year. And then the team lost all of its pieces, and more eyes have turned to him, and more focus has turned to him, and people are more used to him. And when you watch the FC Dallas games, if you watch the commentators that don't know this team as well, without fail, they talk about, particularly in the recent stretch, the commentators without fail talk about all eyes are on Velasco as being the one guy that could do something special today. Well, whenever that's true of the other team too, and so I think a lot of it is just, a little bit of a sophomore slump in the sense of like an acceptance or a belief that everything you're doing is working, and you stop trying to do things that are new or inventive or varied and trying to constantly be pushing yourself, and it's sort of like, okay, I've got this. Well, then everybody figures you out and everybody now is watching you specifically. And that kind of makes it even harder. And then you get into a slump of, oh, it's not working, man. I better go back to my bread and butter. What was really good. Well, even that's not working. And then now you're frustrated, and now you're worried about it. And so now you're panicking about it, perhaps internally. That makes it even worse. It all compiles. And you are talking about a young, not in maybe world terms, but in terms of his own personal being, he is a young kid still. He's not an experienced adult. He's a young adult. And he probably is on his own in another country for the first time ever, and even if he has friends and even if he has a dog now and all that kind of stuff, I imagine that some of it weighs on him a bit, and he's feeling a lot of the weight of the shoulder. Like we talk about how he carries himself like he's got the weight of the world on him, and that really is kind of what it is right now. He probably recognizes that he's the best player still left. And he's like, oh my God, I got to do this by myself, and it's not fair to him really that we expect him to do it. And because we have such high expectations, because they do pay so much money for him, we do think we need to see you do it, dude. And then he knows that, and it makes it worse.
So somebody not much younger than he is, in fact, Are they the same age, Bernie and Alan? Is Alan a year older than Bernie?
Oh gosh, Bernie's 20-ish, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny. I mean, Bernie hit what
Bernie's
his
21.
Oh yeah, so he's actually older. Okay, Bernie hit what his third goal this season with that finish.
Yeah, yeah,
It was a nice Superman finish.
yeah. Bernie is really good at like what we talked about earlier, right? When the moment comes, taking it, and doing something special in the moment. But at the same time, he's doing it. He's played 300 minutes, and Alan's played 1,600 minutes, and made 19 starts, and Bernie's made 3. So there's no pressure on Kamungo. There's no eyes on him. He's the guy slipping through the cracks, and no one's paying attention to him. There's not 3 guys following him around the field. There's not 20,000 fans staring at him going, "Okay, dude, why do you suck?" It's different pressure, different world. Nobody expects Bernie to do anything. Everyone expects Alan to do everything. So there it is.
Yeah, there's some interesting differences. Well,
Yeah.
I'm happy for Bernie. It's a fantastic story and continues to be. And he's taken his opportunities. He's had a couple of opportunities that he's junked up over the last few games that he's had, but he's also taken a few, and he scored his 3 goals. And I think that's more than Allen scored this season. So
yeah. But think of it this way: like, what would you think if all of a sudden Jesus and Paul and Lletget and O'Brien, if all those guys were gone and it was just Velasco and just Bernie, and all of a sudden Bernie is getting paid $1 million, and all of a sudden everyone's looking at Bernie and going, "You're starting 34 games and you need to score 15 goals." Like, how might he perform, or how might he feel about himself, or how much weight would be on him?
Sure. Yeah. Could be a completely different scenario.
Completely different. Like, Bernie has no weight. That guy's free and easy. I'm breaking in. Things are going awesome. I get my 10 minutes. I get a goal. I'm a superstar, He's living on cloud 9. Whereas, expectations matter, man,
Yeah. Well, that's actually put a pin in that, because I think that'll lend neatly into the conversation I want to have here in a little bit. So Dallas gets the draw in Seattle to finish up the first half of the season. That means they're currently sitting 8th, is it? Yeah, 8th place with 30 points, 1 point above Houston, and 1 point behind Vancouver. St. Louis in first, 11 points ahead of them, and with 41 points. So they're in the playoffs as it is now, Buzz, but a lot of things can change between now and the end of the season.
Well, it's way past the halfway point. This is more like 2/3 point.
Fair.
Yeah.
I'm just saying halfway point because of the
All-Star break. Yeah. Well, look, the league is so tight, right? You're talking about from second place to where Dallas is 7 points. And then from Dallas to 13th place is, what is that? That's 8 points. So, a couple of results one way or the other, you can be in second or last. It just is the way it is in this league. Even the best team has 6 or 7 losses. No one's going, 1 loss or 2 losses like we see in the big, huge, massive leagues sometimes with your unbeatens, or I shouldn't say that. FC Cincinnati only has 2 losses. They're obviously the pole setter for the
in the West
Shield.
though. St. Louis is top when they have 1 loss less than FC Dallas.
Yeah, they have 8 losses and LFC has 6 losses. I mean, this is a league of parity. It's going to make a big difference to get some guys healthy. Dallas is the exact same team now that we thought they were, 3 months ago. It's just that they're all hurt. So offensively speaking, not defensively, they've been in place, but you can't do it just on defense. This just goes to show you that while good defense is really important, you still need to be able to score goals. They've got a -1 goal differential right now, which is telling, right? That, like, given how bad the team's been for like 2 months now, where they've won 1 game, right? They're still at basically a 500 in goal differential. It's like, it just takes a couple of guys coming back to get this thing turned in a positive manner. This is a team that keeps it tight anyway, and you'll start to inch back up in the standings. When you get some bodies healthy, I think, I don't, it's not like you need people to come back and play like they're world beaters just to be consistent and to get in the playoffs. Now, if you want to win something, you're going to need some guys to come back and take it to another level, but just to be what you were back in May, just get Ariel healthy and get Jesus back here and actually playing. And if Lletget keeps taking these little baby steps forward, that'll be, enough to get them, back where they were in the top third of the Western Conference or whatever.
So that leads to the fact that this team has another game in just 2 days, or I guess depending on when you're listening to the pod. On Friday, they start Leagues Cup. They got the game against Charlotte, and then they've got the game against Necaxa the following Tuesday on the 25th. I honestly have no idea what Nico does with either one of these games.
Well, like I said before when I talked to him, he said, we're not going to sacrifice our season for this. The league matters way more. But Charlotte, you have 2 home games. It's set up to benefit the teams that are higher in the standings, which at the time was Dallas. Charlotte's 12th in the East with 9 losses to Dallas's 9 losses. So basically, again, MLS parity, they're all the same. Necaxa's 14th. Granted, their season just started, but they're 0-2-1. They haven't won a game yet. And they're going to be in early season form. So this will be the flip, really, of the Champions League, if you believe that stuff about season form, because all the MLS teams will be in mid-season. Not that that'll help Dallas, of course, the way they're playing. I just don't think – I think you can expect to see some rotation. I think you can expect to see them try and get guys going, like get Paxton and Areola and Lletget, try and get those guys going more than they have been, and try and rest dudes that have had a heavy load. Edwin and Facundo have both played a lot of minutes in this scene. Nkosi and Ibiaga have played a lot of minutes lately. So you'll see – Martinez needs to come back and give those guys a break. You need to have Paxton and Siki come in and give either Edwin or Facundo some time off. Yeah, you want to play Lletget. You want to play Areola. You probably don't want to play Jesus when he comes back. You probably want to say screw it and keep him on the bench and give him a break. You don't want to risk him. Play Mulatto, play O'Brien, play Kamungo, some of those guys. Play Bernie, let Dante Sealy get some time. It'll be a little bit of rotation, I think, and we can go place by place if you want to get specific and do it.
Well, I'm just I'm just fascinated to know, like, for example, if Paxton has been this mystery injury going on now, what feels like for quite a while. He's hurt, and then he's back, and he plays, and now he's out again. I mean, is it worth risking him, or is this the opportunity to try to see? I don't know. I mean, players like that, it's a mystery to me how they're going to put this thing together and not risk the rest of the season.
Yeah. Well, you maybe take it easy with him, but, you want to play Lletget anyway, and you got Siki around. You can play him some. Put those 2 guys in midfield with either Facundo or Edwin, and then let them flip-flop, like split their minutes each, so that neither one of them plays more than like 45 to 60 minutes. To give them a little bit of break. And the same with Martinez, do the same thing. Like give Tafari a game off, give Ibiaga a game off, one or the other. Let Junka start for Farfan again. Giovanni just came back, so that's fine. You can play him. Tuamasi just came back to training. So maybe a week from now, maybe you'll start to get him some minutes, so you're not worried about it necessarily for the first 2 games. Gio will be fine for back-to-back games. He's hardly played, except, of course, he stinks defensively. I might be tempted to sit Velasco. That's the real interesting question is like, how sensitive is Velasco? If you sit him just to give him a mental break, will he take that the wrong way? And it may be even worse. Is it better to play him? I don't know enough about him personally to know how he would react, because it might be better just to keep playing him and let him try and fight through it. I don't know. I definitely would not play Jesus.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No.
Just let him sit and rest?
Yeah. Dude, if you can't come to Seattle and play, if instead you're going to go to D.C. and fart around an All-Star game, then you can sit around for the month. That's fine. Don't play him in any of this Leagues Cup stuff. Unless you get through to like the final or something.
Yeah. The All-Star game just finished. Arsenal ended up winning 5-0.
Did he get in?
He was subbed in the 33rd minute and played, and was subbed out in the 69th.
So 30 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
he could have easily made it to Seattle and sat on the bench and given him 10, 15 minutes. I know he played a bunch in the Gold Cup, but Roldan and Morris both came back and played. So, and I know they didn't play him Jesus' minute loads. I wasn't talking about starting Jesus. I mean, I thought that they might because they were so desperate, but it kind of annoyed me that he wasn't on the bench for that. Instead, he went to DC and did this. So, I usually give Jesus a lot of benefit out. The kid's fantastic, but this one annoyed me.
Yeah. Well, he played 36 minutes, had no shots, a passing percentage of 60.
No.
and won a single duel. So I didn't
Great.
see the game. I'm going to guess that means his game was reflective of the final score.
I hate those things.
Yeah, no fun at all. Anything else that you think we should be looking forward to? Is there a chance that maybe they bring up some other players from North Texas to try to help fill some holes?
No, the official rosters were posted today, and there's nobody from North Texas on the roster. I don't know what the rules were. I don't know whether you had to use your MLS roster or what, but they listed the Dallas roster, and it's literally exactly their FC Dallas senior team roster. I mean, they have Parker and they have Smith on there from their loans are listed on the official roster, but that's probably just a reflection of what's the official roster for the league, I would imagine. I doubt that means they're going to recall them for this kind of, barely bigger than an exhibition.
Yeah, I'm fascinated.
No, it's not bigger than an exhibition. It's just a crap mid-season friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering, I mean, my sense is that the excitement level over this thing is really low, and the only thing that's giving it any breath is, the fact that Messi will debut, along with Sergio Busquets. I can't believe Farton Busquets is playing in this. It's so weird. So I don't know, man. There's a part of me that's frustrated by the fact that Dallas was awarded getting to host these games for this group stage, and the team's in the shape that it's in, and it's almost as if everybody's just kind of quietly, hey, let this thing happen over here. Nobody pay attention to it, and it'll go away very quickly, and we don't have to worry about it anymore. And that kind of sucks that it's gotten to that point.
Well, not to be this guy, but I'm not feeling like there's going to be much of a crowd at all. I mean, I know they have this hypothetical large number of sales because of this potential Messi thing, but like I'm betting like on a Friday, Tuesday game combo that the crowds are going to be, mediocre, not half full venue.
I wonder what kind of crowd Necaxa will pull on a Tuesday night.
Man, I have no idea what Necaxa's draw is in Dallas. I mean, I know if it was Tigres, they would get 7,000 or 8,000 Tigres fans would show up. I know that. Monterrey would do decent ish numbers. Pachuca might do decent-ish numbers, but I don't know enough about Necaxa's fan base in the Metroplex. It's not like it's one that I've noticed particularly, like I have some of those other ones. So I'm looking. I will eat crow if I'm wrong, but if there's 12,000 of these two games each, I'll be ecstatic that they got 12,000.
Okay. Well, that's. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
They'll announce the attendances because they tied so many people into that whole thing of buying all the tickets to get a chance at Messi.
Yeah, it'll be announced sellout or close to it, but the stands will be empty. My guess is the stands will be empty. And we're not helping, of course, poo-pooing the whole thing. I'm sure they'll blame us.
Nah. All right, let's move into the topic of discussion I would like to get into, which is the fact that we're in the transfer window, Buzz. And there was an interesting note that Bryan Reynolds, see, I had thought Reynolds had signed a deal with Westerlo. I didn't realize that Roma had turned down the offer from Westerlo. So word broke this week that Roma is out shopping him around and trying to make him available. And of course, everybody immediately was like, well, duh, let him come back to Dallas.
Yeah.
And then Buzz immediately put a pillow over everybody's excited little heads and just said, shh.
Yeah.
Go to sleep. It's not happening.
Hashtag bug skill. Yeah. Well, there's a twofold. Granted, some of the stories that were out there were the ideas that Roma wants to loan him again somewhere, which is probably true. And that Dallas was a team that was interested in bringing him back. That may also be true. But, they do like Bryan. There's not any bad feelings there. But you have to consider two things. One is how much it would cost, and two is what would Bryan want. And the problem, first, if you want to buy him, you're probably looking at something between $3 and $5 million to buy him. Yes, his price is down, but you could get him probably for somewhere in that range. Could Dallas afford to buy him? Depends on what you got for Justin Shea. So maybe. Number two, Bryan's salary right now is just under $1 million, or right close to $1 million. Can Dallas afford that? Well, you could make him one of these TAM players where you buy down his salary cap hit and you get it under the DP level, which is kind of what you do with Martinez and Facundo and Lletget. So, Yeah, you could probably do that. Again, how much do you get for Che? I think depending on what the numbers were, Dallas would have the ability to bring in a player on this kind of salary. Well, then you have to wonder, does that make sense at right back? And that's where you get to the no part. Because Dallas as an organization, and I know for sure that people that in the positions that make some of these decisions have told me flat out that generally speaking, they do not believe right back to be a transcendent position. It's not one where you spend a lot of money. So for them to spend $1 million at right back, it's not necessarily something that they organizationally like to do, particularly because they have Giovanni Jesus as a U22 initiative. They have Tuamasi, who's a serviceable, solid pro. They've got Colin Smith on loan, still has potential. There's 3 or 4 kids coming up through Academy in North Texas that have some upside, maybe not Bryan Reynolds upside, but have some upside. This is not a position that they're dying necessarily. Would Reynolds be better than any of those options? Almost certainly. Is that worth $1 million? Man, no. No, it's not. And then in the end, that's the real thing. The real thing is like, would it benefit Roma and would it benefit Bryan? No, not really, because once they got Mourinho in there, Bryan was going to be screwed at Roma. Well, that doesn't mean Roma wants to give him away for nothing. They want the player to develop. And playing in MLS is not going to be any better than playing at Westerlo was. It's going to be about the same. Training at Roma was probably pretty good for him, honestly, under some of their really good coaching. He hasn't regressed or anything. He's not a worse player. He's still right there on the fringe of the national team. But that's the thing. He's going to be looking at the national team. He's like, how do I take the next step where 3 years from now, I'm on the World Cup team? That's what he's going to be thinking. And starting for FC Dallas for the next 3 years is not the answer to that question. So for him and for Roma, maximizing his value, maximizing his potential with the national team, those all point to something better than MLS and Westerlo, but not as good as Roma. What that is for them to decide. There's probably lots of options, but I just can't see it benefiting either FC Dallas or Bryan Reynolds for this thing to happen like that idea was floated. As much as it would be fun, I love Bryan Reynolds, man. I'd love to have Bryan Reynolds come back, but it just doesn't make any sense to me for all those reasons I just spelled out, not to kill the buzz, as I said.
All right, and I should have, and I'm going to have to rewind here. One of the things I wanted to mention about the Seattle game is we did get to see the debut of Ansa into the game. Any thoughts about that, or was it pretty muted? And just wondering what you had to think about that.
I was more curious if you guys bought my Roland Lamont theory in terms of what he looks like.
I didn't. That didn't become obvious to me, but I probably didn't pay too much attention to it. I'll have to watch him a little bit more to decide if that's the case.
Yeah, I mainly meant it in the way, in like the how he moves and how he looks. Yeah. I think really quickly in 20 minutes, and hopefully Dan will back me up on this. I thought you could already see that he has a much higher level of game understanding than Roland Lamont ever did. He clearly knew what he was doing, which is nice because a lot of times you get players that come in that don't know what they're doing. And he knew how to move and how to run, how to create space and how to get free and how to read the game and when those opportunities for break were going to come. It was actually a relatively, to me, positive first performance. And it made me feel really good about the chance he's actually going to help this team. Dan, I don't know if you agree with me on that or not.
I was trying not to read too much into him because he's being put in a really difficult position there. He kind of backs up against the wall. Playing an attacking position when there's really no attacking threat coming through the team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think the Leagues Cups games are going to be a great opportunity for him to gel with various portions of the team, and hopefully we'll get to see a little bit more out of him.
Yeah, and I should have also asked, and this is bad hosting on my part, I don't mean to go back to an old subject, but Dante Seeley in the Seattle game as well, Buzz. We probably should have talked about him for a couple minutes.
Dante Seeley, a left back?
Yeah, what's up with that?
Well, honestly, what that tells you, and your number one takeaway should be that that's how bad it is. With the roster, that it was like his only option at that point was he was so desperate to get Giovanni off because he was getting just smoked by Chu. And the only answer was, I have to get Junka to the other side of the field. And the only body I have that can actually play on the left side at all is Dante Seeley. And I'm sure the instructions were just stay back and just be in the right place and just be back there. It's entirely possible that PSV used him in some capacities like that. I would not put it past them to have tried that a few times. And so he maybe actually has had at least a taste of doing that somewhere along the line. I've never seen him do it before. I couldn't believe that's what was happening. But he was fine. I mean, he didn't get smoked, which was a big improvement over what was happening before that. And honestly, like, that move worked because Chu didn't do squat against Junka on that other side, and Roldan was causing a little bit of problems on the other side, in the first half, and Sealy, being quicker, was able to run with Roldan more, so relatively speaking, it worked. Seattle was diffused fairly well by that adjustment. Other than that, there's nothing you can take away from it regarding Dante and his ability to help this team, other than like, hey, whatever, we put him on, he didn't die, so right. That's great.
What is the I'm trying to think of the best way to ask this question. What is the better indicator of how badly this season has gone? Is it A, that Dante Sealy had to play left back, or is it B, Bernard Camundo is your second leading goal scorer with 3?
I'm going to go with Dante having to play left back, honestly, because Bernie at 3 is what I would consider normal. The fact that it's the number 2 leading scorer is the problem. There should be somebody at like 5. That's what's missing, right? Yeah. But there have been seasons where the leading scorer has only had 7. So, I mean, that's not out of this world weird. Yeah. Dante Sealy at left back to me is like, holy crap, that's really what you had left at that time.
You're really enjoying those Roland Lamar references today.
Am I? Oh, it's true. Yeah. I was actually thinking more of the season. Blas had 7 and led the team in scoring.
That's right. God, that was a crappy season.
Yeah. There's been multiple seasons where that's like Jesus 18 last year is so remarkable. And the fact that he's, given himself a window to actually do it back to back is just crazy for this franchise. I mean, that's it.
Well, the reason why I brought all this up, I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to backtrack. What I was trying to get to when I mentioned the Ansa stuff is that is the one that's the one move they've made in this window, and what has been a relatively busy window across the league. Even if you take Miami out of the story, it's still been a pretty busy window across the league.
Yeah.
I guess, Buzz, I'm just going to ask you the same question everybody's asking me, and I think they're asking you.
Yeah.
Are they going to make any other moves?
I'm not confident of it. I've been talking a while about how they kind of needed the Che sale to happen to sort of give themselves some ability to do anything. I don't know that they thought that, that where he ended up was where he was going to be going. It's not. I think the idea was that Hoffenheim was going to buy him, and when that didn't materialize, and he was basically like, I'm going back to Europe, period, they probably were stuck trying to get whatever they could. So I don't know, but my instinct is the numbers on this one were not as good as they really needed it to be.
And I know they even got $1 million for him.
Man, if they did get $1 million for it, I'd actually be like, oh wow, they actually managed to get $1 million. When Bayern first wanted him, I would have said 3, but then he, didn't succeed. And that kind of, when you get kicked back out, your value goes down, So if they get $1 million, $1.5 million, I'd be like, oh, great that you got that for him, because your hands were tied. He forced them to do it, So that again, that hurts the value that you're going to get. So I just don't know that they're in a position to just outright buy somebody or sign somebody. A lot of the mechanics are used up. The buyout is used up. International spots are used up. Senior roster spots are used up. Now, could you jettison guys? You could, but then you don't get cap relief when you do that. So then you get into questions like, how much cap do they have? How much TAM GAM do they have? We don't know any of those answers. But you can trade people. So I think it's the chances of them just outright signing a guy, I think, are quite low. The chances of them making a move, however, I think are still pretty good. I'd put it like a 50% chance that they might try and trade somebody inside the league to get to move on somebody they don't want anymore, or to get fill a hole that they might think that they could if they can get somebody that could help them for a season or two. I think you might see that happen, but they won't do it just to do it. This coach is very adamant that every time I ask, he always says, we're always willing to make the team better, but we're not going to do something just to do something. And he says it, and Andre says it, and Dan Hunt says it. And they all say it every time you ever ask him, and it could be that it's all just a party line, but when they say the same thing over and over and over again, at some point you have to be like, and it matches their behavior. They don't go out there and just do things just to do them. Like we came into this season, right? The only thing that happened was they went and got Ibiaga. They didn't hardly do anything else. And we talked about it over this winter. Remember how we were like, we were like, they stood pat and the whole league's going to pass you by. Well, look at those standings. Right?
Look, Buzz, I think if you go back and listen to this podcast in January, much of what has transpired over the course of the last 6-7 months was largely predicted by you, me, and Dan at the beginning of the year. Like this has all been the most obvious course, how it's been laid out and played out over the course of the season. At this point, I still think, look, there's so many teams make the playoffs. I don't think they're so bad that they. I mean, I still think they'll struggle to make the playoffs, but they're not a team that's going to go deep in the playoffs unless A, there is some sort of healing miracle that takes place across the team, and B, those players that come back actually find some sort of form, because a lot of these guys that are hurt weren't in great form when they got hurt to begin with.
And this we still have the same problems with this franchise and this roster that we had all year, right? There's still a little bit light at center back. Having traded Brandon Cervania and then had all those injuries, I think we can look at the midfield and think that they're fairly light in the midfield. And the way they've run out of options once Jesus was gone at 9 shows you that they're probably a little bit light at 9. Now, they just brought in Ansa, so maybe there's an attempt up front. They just brought back Dante Sealy. That's a little bit up front. Okay. So you can look and say, I can see a couple other spots that I think that this roster could be improved. Can you do it without spending a boatload of money? Because I don't think they have boatloads of money laying around. Could you do it by making a move? Maybe so. So, I think straight up signing, the odds are low. I think trade, if somebody comes to them with an offer that they really like, it would not shock me. Or if there's somebody out there on a free, which there's a name on a free that I think makes some sense. So we'll see. And we can get to that guy if you want. He's on the run down there.
Sonora?
Yeah. Alan Sonora just terminated his contract with FC. It's Juarez, right? I think it's right down there in El Paso, right? He's the one who is on the fringe of the national team. He just played in the Gold Cup. He's the one that said he wanted to come to MLS to cement himself in the U.S. national team pool. And there was talk that of a couple of teams that were interested. So the fact that he voided his contract means he's available on a free. So you could just sign him. And you can look at the way FC Dallas is laid out lately. You can look at the injuries they've had in central midfield at the 8 position. You could argue that after they traded Brandon, they had Lletget, they had Paxton, they had Siki at 8, and then they had nobody. Maybe, now his dad played for FC Dallas, remember? He's one of the younger ones. He is an American, so no international needed. You know what I mean? I mean, like, that's a move. Whacking my microphone, sorry. That's a move that makes sense to me. I have no idea if Dallas is interested in him or not, but it fits a need, and he's free, and you can get him into the roster. So that's a trifecta of, like, if anyone ever asks you what's a name that they could add that could actually make sense, that's a guy. Is he a world beater? No, but his contract would be, I don't know, 250, 350, maybe it's 4, somewhat reasonable actually. Look at what Ema's on, or look at what Ryan was on, or look at what Farfan's on. You can buy some of those numbers,
My well-documented pessimistic superpowers are vibing very hard these days about the status of the club, and I don't want to beat everybody down with all of that stuff. But the thing that I'm having, I spent a lot of time contemplating, is the reality that the Hunts have done such a good job at converting people and coming to the games in the last 2 seasons. I mean, they've just, I still contend that this is one of the least underreported stories in the sports media here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, is how that part of it, the attendance thing, has been such a good turnaround. And I just continue to wonder how much of that is at risk with all of these new fans when they suddenly all have this realization that the rest of us had decades ago that the Hunts just aren't going to go out and start buying and spending a lot of money to go get big names. And yeah, your transfer window in July may be a guy from the Israeli Pro League and a guy that had to buy out his contract from a second tier Mexican club.
Well, let me be 100% clear that it's not like I know something about Alan Sonora. I'm 100%.
No, I get it.
I'm not trying to hint around here. I just do math and think, man, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, I'm trying to make my point under the idea that maybe they do that deal, but I'm still saying that's not gonna get anybody excited about this club.
Well, it comes back to the thing we always say, right? Is just look at the way that the Hunts operate the Chiefs. They are willing to pay their guys, but they don't go out and sign a guy away from somebody else for crazy money. And so that's the way the Hunts operate here. They operate in a budget. They're going to pay their guys. They paid Lletget. They paid Areola, right? They're paying Paxton. They're paying Jesus. They're signing homegrowns. They're investing in the academy. They do all those things. They don't go sign Messi for $700 million. They don't even go get Rui Diaz level guys, or Vela level guys. They don't even do that, let alone Messi. So you have to, if you're going to be a fan of this team, you have to understand that that's who runs this team. And ever since they tried it with Danielson, and they were one of the first people to try it, and they got burned bad, and they never have. I mean, even Velasco, right, which is the biggest spend they've ever done. Look how they did it. They did it on a young guy. Theoretically, you're going to flip for profit. That was your theory. Maybe you're not gonna, but that's what the plan was. Not, they're not going to go spend on a 32-year-old like Toronto FC does. Thank God, actually.
Well, that's kind of comes back to the thing that I asked you to put a pin in about this, which is, is there an argument to be made that Dallas needs to stop, at least for a bit, in terms of trying to go out and sign a young prospect that's going to become that and turn them into a superstar, and maybe spend some money on somebody that actually has some skins on the wall as a veteran player? And I don't mean a veteran player in terms of Roland Lamah or Ansa type veteran player.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like a legitimate player that can help this team and doesn't have growing pains or homesick or stuff like that.
Man, those are expensive.
It's kind of my point.
I know. I mean, the closest we came to that was Mauro Diaz, and then he was hurt so much. He only started 50% of the games he was available for, because he was hurt all the time.
Yeah.
Even David Ferreira, that was a diamond in the rough guy. Shellis had seen him playing some scrub game somewhere. And granted, he was playing for pretty good teams like Cap and stuff, but he still wasn't a profile, and you just know the Hunts aren't going to do that, man.
No, and again, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse. This is obviously a conversation we've had more times than we care. Right. But the point I'm trying to, let me try to do a better job of this. With all of the success they've had off the field in the attendance, is there, do you think, any thinking internally in the team that maybe they have to rethink their business model to sustain this success they've had in the stands, understanding that at some point everybody's going to go, oh yeah, this is really, we're wasting our time?
I don't actually, because there have been eras where this team has been really good, like under Oscar Pereira, and nobody came. And that the jump in attendance this last two seasons coincided with the Pepe sale and the money that came in and the elevation of money and the hiring of somebody that knew what they were doing with marketing. So I honestly think that to me, the difference in the stands has nothing to do with the product, because this coach these last 2 years plays a very defensive product. It is not sexy. It is not pretty.
But hold on. Can I push back on that a little bit?
Sure.
It was way sexier last season than it has been this season.
On the road home, it was a little sexier, but the road wasn't at all. I don't know that it was all that better. I don't think. I thought it was about the same, honestly, in my opinion. It's not.
Well, I think there were key players that were playing better last year
than
they
that's
are
true.
This year.
That's true, but that's that doesn't mean the product was sexier. You know, like it's not Tiki Taki or Jogo Bonito or, you know, even a high powered like shoot 'em up vertical like Leicester or something. You know, there's not like bags and bags of goals going in. You know, it's not a high entertaining product. It's not beautiful. It's not pretty. You know, even Lucci Ball, as much as it can be annoying, still was like pass. It kind of looks pretty cool. You know, I just don't know that, like, I don't think you can point, in my opinion, you can't point at the play on the field as the thing that made the attendance after 20 years of 12 to 15K, all of a sudden 19K sellouts overnight isn't because the product is gorgeous. It's something else. It's the money. And I think they'll probably think that too. And so I don't think they're going to think, man, we got to pay off these new fans with some hype signing. I don't think that the fans know, honestly, not the bulk of them. Maybe I'm a jerk. I don't know.
Well, there is certainly a level of name and talent that if they're willing to come play in Frisco, right? That's probably number one. B, you got to be willing to pay them. That I think that if you can get that kind of player to sign, there's enough educated soccer smart people in the Metroplex that would appreciate having that level of player playing in the league.
Probably, but I'm sitting. Well, you remember when Nashville was here like a month ago? I'm sitting in the stands, and every time Hani Mukhtar touched the ball, the people around me were like, "This guy sucks. He's terrible. What an awful player." I'm like, "Are you out of your mind? Mukhtar's a superstar in this league. He's the MVP. He's arguably one of the best 2-3 players in this league. The guy's phenomenal player, and the people around me are trashing him as being a horrible player." And I'm like, I don't. So like this idea that like so-and-so is going to come in here and people are going to be like, "Ooh, what a player." Unless it's messy, I don't think the average fan, no offense, is not going to know the difference. You know, like,
okay.
I mean, Hani Mukhtar is an MVP, and I guarantee you that 95% of the people in the stands at an FC Dallas game have no idea who that is. Now, when Vela was here, the stadium went crazy when he subbed in because he's a Mexican superstar. But your average, like, world-beating MLS player, no one here has any idea who that. Like, look at the LAFC's forward that they have this year that's phenomenal. And when they came here and played, the people around me are trashing that guy as a horrible player, and he's leading the league in scoring. It's arguably going to be the MVP. And then Vela subbed in, the old man who can barely run, and everybody went crazy. You know? So I honestly think, like, it doesn't matter what product you put on the field. You know, if you want to buy some hype, I think people would care. Otherwise, they don't care, because I'm not sure the average fan honestly recognizes good play when they see it.
Well, that's uplifting.
I'm a jerk, I know. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. It is. It is what it is.
I got a little dark there. My bad.
Yeah, sometimes it's just good to be honest. There's some incredibly knowledgeable, dedicated FC Dallas fans, and there's a lot that aren't.
Yeah,
that are there for the Vela, that are probably really excited about Wrexham doing a preseason tour because of TV. Couldn't tell you, couldn't identify the fact that their team is dog shit. And, at the same time would go on about, oh, Ferreira is just an MLS player. He's nothing,
Well, it will be interesting to see as the team goes, if this doesn't get better and the season doesn't get better, how long the front office is able to sustain its a significant uptick in terms of attendance and atmosphere and stuff. That will be an interesting thing to keep an eye on as the season moves on.
Well, like I said, the Leagues Cup, I think they're going to be terrible, but I know that the Austin game must be really close to a sellout because I keep seeing them talking about how that's limited tickets. They're pushing it to try and get it over the line. So it's got to be close, and I don't know how. There really is only like 10 or 12 games left, something like that. And I haven't looked at how many of them are at home or not, but there's not a lot of opportunities, honestly, other than Leagues Cup. Atlanta and Seattle both have to come here. So those will draw pretty well, you would think, after Austin. Right. And then Columbus, no one will care. Colorado, no one will care. San Jose, well, no one will care. So really, you'll sell out Austin and then maybe Atlanta and Seattle. And then people think Columbus sucks, even though they were in the Cup like 2 years ago, and Colorado does suck. So maybe Lucci Ball will bring him to all the boys to the yard for the San Jose game.
Well, I guess we got to struggle through Leagues Cup first, and we'll worry about the rest of the season after the fact. And I think the big hope out of the next 2 games is just that you don't suffer any more injuries. And
you know what my big hope for Leagues Cup is? My big hope for Leagues Cup is that FC Dallas actually wins the thing so that they will win a trophy that isn't MLS Cup just because I want to hear your reaction.
Curse you, Leagues Cup!
And they'll make a huge deal about it, and Peter will be like, no!
One small thing, Buzz. I will challenge you. The Columbus game will sell out because it's a drone show.
Oh, it's a drone show.
Don't
Hey,
care about
listen,
the
there's a
drone
perfect
shows,
example of what's putting people in the stands, man. Those drone shows are huge. They do good business.
That was clever, smart stuff, and I think I've started to see that they've started doing drone shows at other things, other events around town too. And Dallas, the club was kind of the first ones to start featuring that, to the best of my knowledge. All right, well, I think we've bummed everybody out enough for one evening.
Sorry, I know I went sour
Buzz,
on you.
Somebody sounds like they need a vacation, maybe.
Yeah, it's hot. I need out. I'm old, man. It makes me tired. I can't do it.
Grumpy, overheated Buzz Carrick.
Well, so grumpy that somebody fired a coach. We should talk about that.
Yeah. So what is? I'm sorry. I haven't paid attention to the B team in a really long time. And when I saw that he had been fired, I was like, oh, that's what that guy's name was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did they fire him because the media team was no longer able to get any of the local TV stations to cover the story about him being at the Allen Mall?
Yeah, possibly.
They had kind of wasted. That had kind of had its run.
They fired him right after the Houston game, and so quickly, in fact, that it feels like one of those games where they just are like, because Houston hadn't won in 4 straight and hadn't scored a goal in like 4 games. And I feel like maybe this would have been, it was kind of like it had like an ultimatum vibe. Like, listen, you've got to win this game or it's over. And then he didn't, because it happened really quickly. And
wasn't this Nico's dude?
Well, we don't know that for sure. He's from Spain though. You know, he'd been coaching for Austin.
Doesn't everybody in Spain know each other?
Well, you know, when you have a problem with the previous coach not getting along with the current first team coach, and the thing falls apart mostly over that and the complete inability for them to work together, and then they go out and hire a guy from Spain who you knew, at least on some level, you know, and we believe that at least like his fingers are in it. It felt like his kind of coach, if nothing else. But, you know, the press release had some language in it about, you know, making a move that wanted to make their season compatible, which is really weird because when you watch that team play, that coach was shifting through his lineups all the time. To me, I read it like, well, they've got to be making these decisions based on trying to develop people because they're picking guys that are clearly worse and playing them over guys that are clearly better. You know, there are things that you've done that gave you a better chance to win, and then you don't continue to do them. So, okay, it's a developmental thing. You're playing some academy kids. You're playing some of these foreign dudes to see if they have anything. Well, that's what it looked like. And then they fired the guy. So maybe he was just a really bad coach. On the other hand, because of this gap between FC Dallas, MLS and Next Pro, and Dan, I'm sure will be able to back me up on this, there's still this gap there. So they basically have stopped sending guys down, right? They loaned Parker and Smith to USL instead because this thing wasn't any good for them. And then Norris has stopped going down. Corsa has stopped going down. Bernie stopped going down. Mulatto has stopped going down. Now, that stoppage in sending those guys down to play has coincided with all the injuries. So it could have been just that. But it also, I think, is the fact that league is not particularly good. And they had it for a while. They were playing a whole bunch of academy guys. There were games where they would have 5 or 6 academy guys in at a time in the lineup, and they were rotating through a bunch of them. Well, those guys all went to college, and now we have a new set of academy guys that are beginning to filter in. And so the last couple of lineups have been all these foreign guys and they stunk. They haven't won a game in like 10. They're not scoring goals. They're bleeding goals out of the back. They're just not any good. And there's 4 or 5 guys that I would cut right away on that team. So instead they fired the coach. So, it's weird to watch the way they operate the thing and then be mad that the guy didn't get results. And I'm like, dude, you're not giving him any players. So, listen, soccer, and I've said this a million times, coaches say this, I think you probably know this, it's about the players, right? It's always about the players. A manager, once the game starts, a manager can only do so much. You can sub a guy in, that's about it, really. Like the players on the field do what they want. It's like you got to have talent, and he didn't have any. And so they promoted an assistant to head coach, and he'll have a chance, I'm sure, to win himself a job.
Who is that?
Gall, he was the U19 coach for the academy, and then he's the director.
Welsh guy?
Yeah, he's the director of academy coaching.
Yeah.
And he was U19 coach, and then since he left that, and now he's still director of academy coaching, and he's the assistant for North Texas. So now he's the interim head coach. So I'm sure he's getting a chance to win himself the job. Michelle is still there as a assistant, and so is the keeper, Zobek. So those guys are still running it, and we'll see if they can get any better. I'm not optimistic because they have some really crappy players.
So we finished the pod even stronger
Yeah.
than we tried to a few minutes ago.
Well, Dan knows this apparently, and maybe Dan, you want to tell a story about the scouting director, since that was your story. You know better than I did.
That he's been the guy that's kind of running it, or?
Yeah. Essentially, Zanata has not been picking players for that team so much. They've kind of handed it off to their head of scouting, and their GM, Matt Denny, have been kind of getting players for that team. And, to me, the group they've got this year doesn't look so good. It's not, I see there's one guy that I think is okay. And the foreign players now, mind you, is the ones I'm talking about. So the bulk of them all, to me, have been terrible. So it's like,
To me, it's just like the purpose of that team just isn't doing what it was originally. That first season, it was all about sending players down, getting you guys like Bryan Reynolds, like Tanner Tessman, getting them guys experience, getting them some hard knocks against 30-year-old pros. Now it's all, let's find a guy from the Colombian second division who's young and we think may potentially project to the first team at a big stretch, and just basically use this as an extended trial, playing in games that they're just completely not ready for at this point.
yeah, everyone in the league is running the same kind of team. It's these, U23 team basically with maybe a rehab guy now and then. So like everyone's doing the same. So you don't get that variety of quality of teams, and this variety of quality of styles and ages, so it's just, they're caught in no man's land with what to do with the stupid thing, and they can only use a certain amount of academy players. You have to have a certain amount of players that are just signed to that team, and you have to use a certain amount of homegrowns or whatever else coming down for assignment. They've quit doing that. They quit bringing guys down, so it's just homegrowns and these 20-year-old whatevers that are not any better than what they've got coming out of the academy. And I want to say to them, just play a whole bunch of academy kids. Well, you can't. You can only play up to 7 of them in a game or on any given roster. So it's not that simple, but Dan's correct in the sense that the team's sort of slipping through the cracks of what are we going to do with this thing. They do it because they have to, and there used to be this idea behind it, as Dan says, when it was in USL 1 and it had this value that for them, they kind of have lost. And that's demonstrated by, as I said, Smith and Parker being on loan to championship teams instead, because the value's not there in terms of like progressing a homegrown,
Sure. It doesn't help that it's not a good standard. It's not a case, there is a big jump to MLS, and those loans to USL championship teams are vital. But I mean, still, it's just that first season you had Orlando and Toronto that kind of had this sort of strategy going of just like, we're going to sign a whole different team. They are not Orlando. They are not Toronto players. They are purely OCB or TFC2 players who are probably never going to come close to even training with the team, let alone making that roster. And And, I think everyone in Dallas, like, watching North Texas win the league pretty comfortably, scoffed at that. And like, well, glad the club here is using it to develop future players that have actually got a realistic shot. And we've kind of watched that go out the window. I mean, we talk about the hybrid contracts and everything, and FC Dallas not having North Texas FC Dallas not having the greatest of luck with it, but you're kind of, you're dangling the carrot, right? Of, we're going to put you in a competitive team, we're going to show you a progression where you can get to MLS. Now, I'm going to probably just bring someone in from Brazil who's played some high school soccer, and they're just going to get the minutes in front of you.
Yeah, it's not good, Bob.
Wow. FC Dallas for the nerds.
Yeah. It's just dark podcast, man. What's going on?
No, that's super nerdy stuff right there.
It's
It is.
season.
Anyone that stuck around for North Texas talk is going to be hardcore.
So when do we get into kit talk?
I saw that the Luton Town kit you predicted turned out to be almost exactly right.
It was close.
It's my favorite
there
design. The
was a
racing
leak.
stripe design is my favorite.
There was a leaked photo, so that was
Wow.
what was
Oh, cheater.
yeah, a
Cheater.
little bit.
Well, at least you fessed up to it, Dan. Do you like it? Are you happy with it?
I like it. The only thing I don't like is the sponsor. They only agreed to the sponsor really late in the day, so it's badly photoshopped on. But that's the only thing that's like stopped me from pre-ordering it.
Okay.
But I will be ordering it with the Premier League badges and all that shit. So.
Of course you are.
Hey, Dan, what's your Premier League team?
Well, now I actually have one. So, yeah.
That's an inside joke.
All right, boys. Well, Buzz, I hope you travel safely all the way up to the
Thanks,
promised
man.
land.
Yeah.
And we get to hear from you again. So we are going to continue to do pods while you're in the upper north, correct?
Yeah, the one next week will be, Wednesday, Thursday-ish. At earliest it'll be Thursday morning. It might be Thursday late, probably, because obviously I'll be like on Pacific time. Or not obviously. I'll be on Pacific time, since people may not know that. And we'll do our best. We'll play 2 games in Leagues Cup, so we'll see where we are. We'll have stuff to talk about. So we'll definitely do it. It just you might not see it till really late Thursday or Friday morning.
Unless you get eaten by a bear.
Unless I get eaten by a bear or have some kind of awful travel experience.
And aside from subscribing to Patreon, buying shirts from whatever the t-shirt store is now, maybe we could crowdfund a wireless hotspot for Buzz.
Well, I have a phone. It works.
Yeah, I just remember you sitting in. Was it you were sitting in a reception of something, or sitting in your car last year?
We did one where I was in my car. We did one from a hotel room. By the time we're doing the next podcast for this particular trip, I'll be at my in-laws' house, so the internet will be perfectly fine. I just got to remember to take my good microphone so I don't sound like I'm sitting at the bottom of a well or something.
All right,
So-
maybe we can hold off on that 5G hotspot until next year then.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Well, Buzz, again, travel safely. Dan, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. And when's the Premier League season preview? I care this year, funnily enough.
No, we're still putting that one together. We're actually on the 29th. The two guys that live here in Dallas, the one that owns Leyton Orient and the other guy that owns Woking, are coming on the show on the 29th of July to kind of preview the upcoming season, their leagues, and just talk about all of the stuff that they're doing to get started. So it'll probably be the show after that, Dan. How about that?
Very nice.
Please keep predicting Newcastle getting relegated, because you guys have been doing that for like 6 years now, and it's been great.
I think that's unlikely to happen this year.
Oh, is it?
Buzz.
Finally?
You may get the opposite of your wish.
Finally.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the case. Yeah.
It's okay. I'm looking forward to rubbing it in your faces in June, I guess, when Luton doesn't finish 20th and break Derby's record of 11 points.
Well, you're gonna have to play a game first, which means your stadium has to get finished, sir.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
The floodlights are actually up now,
All right. Good.
supposedly.
Third Degree the podcast has been brought to you by Soccer90.com. Right now you can get all the new stuff and new arrivals, the Women's World Cup gear, FC Dallas, European club gear, all the stuff for the new season. They got the Marvel stuff, the pre-match, the MLS Cup balls. everything you could want. Third Degree listeners get 20% off at soccer90.com when you use the code Third Degree at checkout. Some exclusions do apply.
All right, Buzz, travel safe. Dan, thank you very much. And thank you, FC Dallas Curious Fan. We will speak to you next week, some way, somehow, on another episode of Third Degree, the podcast.
And it won't be as depressing.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.